City Council. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Devine.
Here.
Friedman. Here. Najarian. Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Sinanian.
Here. Today's flag salute will be led by Councilmember Friedman.
I invite you to rise and join me in renewing our pledge to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for tonight's invocation. Let us join in prayer for our city as we ask for guidance and wisdom for tonight's meeting. We pray for safe neighborhoods and prosperity and ask that we work together to make Glendale a wonderful place for everyone who lives and works here. We ask that you look after our sons and daughters who serve in our military and ask that you bring them home safe. We ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. May we have the report, please?
The agenda for the October 28, 2014 regular meeting of Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, October 23, 2014 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. What's next?
Under presentations and appointments.
Ms. Beers.
Mayor Sinanian, members of the City Council. For the Glendale Housing Authority for November 4th, we have no business agenda items. For the afternoon, to commence at 3 p.m., we do have a special meeting of the Glendale City Council, Director of Community Development. This is regarding the City Bank project, which is located at 201 West Lexington Drive. And that afternoon, we also have General Manager of Glendale Water and Power, and this is regarding assignment of energy transactions. That evening, for the council meeting to commence at 6 p.m., we have a few consent items: Director of Community Development, funds for community beautification projects, CIO, competitively bid telecommunication and data services, Chief Information Officer amendment of the fiscal year 14-15 applications budget for the city's Microsoft Enterprise Agreement software license. We have a number of action items that evening. Chief of Police, this is the DNA Capacity Enhancement and Backlog Reduction Grant. Director of Community Services and Parks, funds received from the Glendale Unified School District for a Regional Career Pathways Project. Director of Public Works, update regarding State Route 710 North, and this is a study and status of proposed 710 freeway extension. Director of Economic Development, potential ground lease of city-owned property commonly referred to as Parking Lot 31. Director of Community Development, this is a moratorium on new land use entitlements in the downtown specific plan area. And City Attorney, campaign finance ordinance, as well as term limits. And lastly, City Clerk, calling for and giving notice of the general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, April 7th, 2015. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Beers. What's next, Mr. Clerk?
4 consent items, including minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
I'll put item 4D for separate consideration. Otherwise, if anyone will
Move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Thank you.
second.
May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Devine.
Yes.
Friedman.
Yes.
Najarian. Weaver.
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Item 4D, I have a very short question. If you don't feel like giving a presentation, I'll just ask my question.
It has to be read into the record then.
Please read it into record.
4D, Director of Human Resources regarding occupational medicine services. 1, motion amending the existing professional services agreement with Glendale Adventist Occupational Medicine Center for an additional 5 years with an option to extend agreement by an additional 2-year period in the amount up to $200,000 annually.
Okay, so the question is, this was the original contract was approved for a 5-year period and initially went through a pretty extensive RFP process. Now this is being extended by another 5-year period. Why aren't we doing a separate RFP on this? It seems like it's a very long period of time, and I know it's up to $200,000, and in previous years it's been far less than $200,000. I know all that. But given that this is a long period of time, 5 years plus another 2-year option, doesn't this warrant a separate RFP?
It certainly can, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
To the extent that we have been extraordinarily happy, and our employees have been, with the service from Adventist Hospital, we felt comfortable in recommending this to you, but certainly it's the council's pleasure. If you have specific questions about the service and what it does for us, I would defer to Mr. Doyle. But at the end of the day, it's something that it's a service that is very unique. We did replace a nurse, basically a company nurse, with this service, and we've been very satisfied with it. But that really is about it, unless I'm missing something, Matt.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, it is a very specialized area. It's I think the expertise that we're looking for is in the occupational medicine field. When we did this RFP in 2009, we sent it out to 6 clinics in the area, and they needed to be here in town because we're constantly sending our employees there. And we had responses from 3, and the very strong runner-up has recently been bought out by Adventist. But Adventist was the only one that really focused on the field of occupational medicine, which is a very key area, is dealing with sort of the management of illness, injury for workplace-related issues. So that's more or less why we're looking at it. And as the city manager says, we've been extremely pleased with their service, and the savings literally of over $700,000 a year from what we previously had. We're extremely happy with that.
And I have no doubt that Adventist has provided incredible service to us, and that number 700,000 a year, you're saying? That's
Savings.
A very impressive number.
Yes.
But you're saying that 5 years ago that was the case, that this specific service that is being provided was specific to them as opposed to the other providers in the city of Glendale. Does that hold true today? Do we know without having done an RFP? Because theoretically speaking, we will revisit this 7 years from now. That's a long period of time. And again, having an open process and having a process in the first place is a very good thing, I think.
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't agree with you more, but I will say that the situation today is even more warranted to go with this group. As I said, we had RFP back then. We had 3 respondents, and they were from 3 area clinics, and Adventist was far and away the best as far as the cost, fees, protocols, really meeting our needs. The second place candidate has recently been purchased by Adventist, so it's the same organization now. The third runner-up was just not even close, and we had very, very strong concerns about their financial capabilities as well.
And Glendale Memorial and USC don't provide this service?
We did not hear from USC back then, and Verdugo Hills wasn't owned by USC.
That's what I'm referring to.
Verdugo Hills Clinic was the one recently purchased by Adventist. Memorial, again, they did not have the qualifications that were anywhere close to them. Now, things could have changed. I haven't looked into what Memorial is doing now, but I will say again, Adventist we've been very happy with them, and they've agreed to expand their hours. They've not increased their fees in all this time, and what we anticipated costing $200,000 a year has not even come close to that. So, again, from a standpoint of staff, we're just very happy with what they've been able to provide.
Okay. I have no more questions. If someone wants to move.
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian, Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
No. Next item, please.
5 City Council staff comments.
Ms. Devine?
Okay, first, I was happy to attend 2 really great events this last week. The first was a luncheon to assist families in need that was presented by the Armenian Relief Society of the Western USA Regional Club. It was fantastic. They had over 200 people there, and all of the money that they gather goes to needy families here as well as in Armenia. And it's always a great group of women who work very, very hard for the cause. And the second event that I attended was the Laugh for a Cause with Glendale Adventist, sponsored by Glendale Adventist. And tomorrow, our city manager will find out if he has indeed been selected as the Army of Pink winner. And this was all done for breast cancer awareness. And it was a fun time, a lot of laughs, and a full Alex Theater, which makes a lot of people very happy as well. So good luck, Mr. Cho, tomorrow. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Yes, Ms. Friedman?
Ms. Devine forgot an event that I know she was at, which was the Glendale Youth Alliance, a wonderful organization that provides job opportunities for young people in the community. Had a roast for our own city manager, Scott Ochoa. There were about more than 200 people there at Scott Ochoa's expense. I know they raised, now I got the number 2 in my head because I think I was told they raised $20,000 at the event, which is terrific. And it was a lot of fun. And if you weren't there, let me just assure you that Mr. Ochoa was well skewered.
No permanent damage done.
Mr. Weaver? Nothing? I'll go next. So I was also at the roast, and not only was Mr. Ochoa very gracious in being skewered, he was actually pretty adept at giving it right back to those who dished it out to him. Great event, great fundraiser. I was also at the Armenian Relief Society's event on Sunday, which was targeting low-income families and homelessness also for the first time. So, very important event, again, a fundraiser for those purposes. Also, on October 23rd, I attended the YWCA's Candlelight Vigil, which is an annual event at this point and intended to provide raise awareness about domestic violence, which is an affliction that societies unfortunately are burdened with, and is something that we need to fight day in and day out, and not just one day out of the year. And YWCA does a very good job of that. Their shelter program, we were just in the afternoon session discussing what it is that we do for our homeless people, and YWCA has a shelter program for individuals. It's women, children, and men. If you look at the statistics, they've actually provided a shelter to a man last year who were victims of domestic violence. And this is a very, very important service for our communities and our city at large. Today I attended the an event that was organized by South Coast AQMD and the Cordova Corporation, and it was at our own brand library about air quality and ecological issues. Very well attended and had a lot of professionals lecturing about those things, the programs that we have to look forward to, which will contribute to our environment being cleaner and our lifestyles being healthier. So I'm noticing more and more of these colloquiums and forums being held at our Glendale library. We just had one last week. That was about transportation issues. So more and more of these events are being held in Glendale. Hopefully that's a sign of Glendale sort of taking a pioneering role and in a front role in these kinds of issues. And that's all I have. What's next?
Sixth community event announcement, 3 minutes long.
And we have 3 cards. First speaker, Norik Markosyan. You have 3 minutes, followed by Sharon Townsend. Yes, Mr. Markosyan, it's your turn. Please state your name for the record.
Norik Markosyan. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it. I'm here to announce a screening of a film by an Armenian filmmaker visiting from Armenia. His name is Tigran Khizmalian. His previous project, he's a documentary filmmaker whose previous projects have won several international awards. But this one is very dear to me and my wife. Excuse me. She can't be here tonight, but hopefully she'll be here next week, because it's about Armenian women. It's about Armenian women starting from the 5,000 years ago to today, that Armenian women used to be matriarchs of the family, and unfortunately today the situation is much different, and this film is to talk about them, advocate their rights, and show us their role in our history, in our 5,000-year history. This event will be on November 20th, 8 p.m. in 5-star MGM Cinema. And I've got some postcards here, and all the information is in there if the public wants to call and reserve their tickets. The phone number is there, and we will be glad to see everybody there.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time. Yes, go ahead,
Question
please.
from Councilmember Devine.
Is the film in English or Armenian, or is it dubbed?
Okay, the film is in Armenian, but it's also narrated in English and Russian. By the way, I forgot to mention that this film is going to be in ARPA Film Festival, and it's going to be shown on Sunday, November 16th, if I'm not mistaken, in Egyptian Theater. But the one that's is going to be shown in Glendale, it's going to be in Armenian with English subtitles. And if there is a demand for it, we'll show the English version also.
You could pass some of the.
I sure will do that.
Council
I sure
members,
will
that'd
do
be
that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sharon Townsend, followed by Elizabeth Manasserian.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and staff. As you probably know, our most recent health needs assessment for the city identified mental health as the number one focus, therefore the number one priority, and this is a nationwide trend, and we certainly have dealt with this in our city. I just wanted to let you know that the second meeting of the Glendale Mental Health Coalition is taking place this Thursday at 6 p.m. at our new permanent home, and that it's at Glendale Adventist Medical Center in their auditorium. This meeting is open to the public, and Dr. Roberto Cerati, a PhD and expert in the field of chronic mental illness and anxiety disorders, will be presenting for us. There will also be an open format with questions and answers. Dr. Cerati is also a La Cañada resident and very involved in this community. His wife is a head ophthalmologist at Glendale Memorial Hospital. It's an all-inclusive coalition. It represents and it encompasses children, adults, seniors, domestic violence, disabled, the homeless population, our schools, the city, and corporations. I hope you'll take a moment to attend. We know we're onto something. We know we're going to make a difference, and we'd love your support and your attendance. And you have a chance to support Glendale Healthy Kids one more time by attending the Firefighters Dinner this Saturday. We have a few more seats left at that, and our 20th anniversary birthday celebration on November the 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend. We have Elizabeth Manasserian next.
Mayor Srinanyan, members of the council, my name is Elizabeth Manasserian. I'm the president of Rotary Club, and with me is Dr. Cal Devnich, who is a co-chair of our program committee. And I'm here today to announce a wonderful, wonderful 2 months of Rotary spirituality, which is going to take place in Rotary Club at noon on Thursdays. And we meet on Thursdays at the Embassy Suite. And Rotary Club has been in Glendale since 1922, February 1st of 1922. We've done many community events and humanitarian projects in the city of Glendale. But this 2 months of November and December are very special. And we would like to invite all the members of the community to come out and support our organization because it's all about spirituality. And I wanted to give you a very brief rundown of what the programs are going to be. The first program is going to be on November 6th by Dr. Carl Tutton, who is going to be talking about Taoism and Tai Chi. November 20th, Kusala Bukshu would be talking about Buddhism 101. On December 4th, Dr. Saleh Kholaki will be talking about Islam 101. On December 11th, we have Pastor Matt Price will be talking about Christianity 101. And December 18th, we'll have Rabbi Rick Schechter talking about Judaism 101. So we have all the major religions actually covered, and would love for all the members of the community to come out and support our Rotary Club. And if you'd like to attend, please go to glendalerotarynoon.org, and you may call 818-635-6357 to reserve a seat the Monday before the event. So if it's November 20th, the Monday before that, please call and make a reservation. Also, I'd like to give you a heads up. Father Gregory Boyle will be coming and visiting our Rotary Club on May 28th. It took us many months to get him here, so we'll have a big event coming. So thanks to Dr. Cal and Makiko Nakasone, our program chairs. We have great, great programs for Rotary Club of Glendale. I'd like to have all of you come. And thank you for being a Rotarian. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manasarian. That's the last card. What do we have next?
Action items. 8A, Director of Public Works and Community Service and Parks regarding Sports Complex Artificial Turf Replacement Project. 1, resolution dispensing with competitive bidding and authorizing a purchase order with Spin Turf, LLC, in the amount up to $877,705.
Yes, Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. As we bring Mr. Duran up to give you the presentation, I will just introduce this by saying, to the extent that that we have the interlocking purchase or the interlocal purchasing system that allows us to procure under our charter this particular material that is consistent with the original provider from 2005 when we last replaced the artificial turf. We are recommending to you that we continue on with this particular product, and the price and the terms are laid out before you. Jess, I don't know if you want to... Oh, I'm sorry, Rubik. I forgot we made that move. That's right. Our capital projects chief, Mr. Golanian, will.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa. Just as a way of background, back in 2005, we replaced the 2 natural turf fields at the sports complex with artificial turf. The typical life expectancy of an artificial turf is between 10 and 12 years, depending on the usage. These turfs, of course, have been used extensively and are now beyond patch and repair. At that time, we paid Valley Crest Landscape Company almost $1.5 million, who then hired Sprint Turf as a subcontractor to install the artificial turf and as well as to remove the grass and replace the subgrade. We have now gotten a construction bid directly from Sprint Turf in the amount of $877,705 to replace the turfs. Sprint Turf is the selected vendor, as Mr. Ochoa mentioned, through the Interlocal Purchasing System, or TIPS for short, which is a national cooperative purchasing program designed for use by public agencies and school districts. All the selected vendor contracts with TIPS are competitively bid. City of Glendale is a member of this purchasing program, and as such, we can choose contractors selected through TIPS without additional competitive bidding. Sprint Turf has done over 1,000 installations in North America and recently completed the artificial turf at Pacific Park. Based on our experience, they have proven to be efficient, effective, and able to deliver a quality product. Therefore, we request your approval to dispense with competitive bidding and award a purchase order contract to Sprint Turf in the amount of $877,705. With that, Mr. Duran and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question. So the old artificial turf that's gone through its lifespan that's going to be removed, what happens to that?
Actually, rather than answer it myself, the representative from the Sprint Turf Company, their West Coast sales manager, Mr. Mike Morant, is here, and I'll refer that to him.
So do we remove it and dispose of it, or do they?
They remove it as part of the project.
So what happens to that?
This particular turf, let me introduce myself. My name is Michael Moranti. I'm the California sales manager for Sprint Turf. In removing this product, it will be reused. It will not go to a landfill. It will be probably resold and reused indoor facilities, could be other landscape projects. We use a lot of it out in the oil fields in Oklahoma as a dust control, but this will be reused and recycled along with the rubber. The rubber is screened and reused and resold.
Yes, Ms.
I have
Devine?
a question. There was some concern about a crumbled rubber component. Is that in your particular turf? Is that a component of yours? There was a concern about crumb rubber component in this grass that could be a health danger.
Yes, there was an NBC report a couple weeks ago, and it had to do with some soccer players up in the Seattle area for the University of Washington. There were some couple players that became ill, and not from the soccer, but they were ill, and there was maybe 2 or 3 of them. So the soccer coach thought it might be the rubber that they were playing on, and so that prompted the story. But actually, there's absolutely no scientific evidence that links the crumb rubber to the soccer players that are ill. We've been building fields since 1997. I actually worked for the city of Seattle for 15 years as an athletic field coordinator, and also for the Seattle Public Schools. So I was part of the very first field that went in the United States that used crumb rubber. And this is the first time that a report like this has surfaced. There's been several reports and several studies over the years that basically say that it is very safe.
I assume that's a long way of saying yes, but it's in your product.
Yes, crumb rubber is in our product. It's used in every synthetic turf field across the nation.
Is that used in residential synthetic turf as well?
Well, synthetic turf is, but the rubber really isn't. The rubber is used for a cushion, for impact, for safety, basically. And that's what the rubber's for. You fill it up, and it stands up the blades of grass, and it's used as an impact safety. You can get your cleats in it, you can turn, you can play. It's like playing on real grass, and that's why it's used.
So they're little teeny pellets of what's in them?
Ground up tires.
What is that made out of?
The SBR tires.
Right. So what are the
components of a tire? It's styrene, butadiene, rubber. It's a synthetic rubber, basically.
Small little pellets. When it rains or people walk around with it, what happens to them?
It basically stays in place. It stays inside the fiber. It doesn't wash away.
Doesn't wash away, but it gets into the cleats, right? That was the complaint.
It gets into the cleats.
So people do take it off the field as well.
Yeah, you take it off the field. You bring it home with you. It gets in your car. It gets in your house.
The area around the field as well.
Yeah, it does come out a little bit, and part of the grooming and maintenance process is you bring it in. But most of the time, most of it stays in the field. But you do get it in your uniform. You get it in your cleats. You do bring it home with you, and that's. I guess moms would complain about that a little bit, but it's either that or mud, and that's basically why they changed the synthetic turfs a long time ago. Is that grass just doesn't hold up with the amount of play out there right now with the youth and adults and college and high school athletes.
I just wanted to make sure that you know or you have scientific knowledge that it is safe for our kids to play.
Absolutely. We have a synthetic turf council, our governing body that has over 60 independent tests from universities, governing bodies all over the world that have done extensive research on this. We take the health of our children very seriously, and we would not put anything out there that would harm our children or our athletes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mr. Galanian, these little pellets, I'm assuming that some of them do wash off the field. I mean, it sounds like people are carrying them off in their clothing, et cetera. So it rains, they go into the storm drains, they go into the ground. Do we know how much of what happens to this if it ends up in the LA River, going to the ocean, percolating into the ground around the sports field? I mean, it's tires, it's not dirt, it's potentially contaminated material.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Friedman, as far as I know, there's about 12 to 16 inches of gravel and aggregate base on the bottom of these artificial fields that potentially will capture all those particulate matter before it goes to our storm drain system.
Except for the ones that, like you said, get caught in the cleats and that sort of thing.
Which would be relatively very small.
Right, I understand. Right. Not a huge amount.
Okay, now I'm going to ask some questions. Oh, Mr. Weaver, go ahead.
No question, just comments. Every car on the street has generally 4 tires, and they're leaving rubber on the streets, which are going into the flood control channels and going to the ocean, more so than the pellets on an athletic field. I remember when I entered Glendale High School in 1954, the field had ruts in it. The football players had to play in it with holes in the grass. When we replaced it with AstroTurf, I think it was 2000 that we did it, was the same condition. It was just too hard on the players playing on the fields. They put an awful lot of stress on it. Even the AstroTurf you're seeing only lasts 5-6 years. It's the amount of use that's being put on. And we have a lot of kids that play sports. Soccer's using it a lot, baseball, everything. And one of these days we'll probably have lacrosse out there too. So this is the safest alternative that we have to put on. So, I figure we gotta stick with it. As I said, there's no scientific studies that show otherwise, and it's being used all around the world. So I'm okay with it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Golanian. So the TIPS system is in essence a facilitator that puts these entities through a competitive bidding process and vetting process and basically does that aspect of it for municipalities or other jurisdictions so that we don't have to, right?
To achieve a better economy of scale.
Right, to achieve economy of scale, exactly. That's great, by the way. That makes all the sense in the world. Is this entity the only entity in TIPS that provides this service, or are there others? This business?
Mr. Mayor, there are other companies who are in the business of installing artificial turf. Sprint Turf was selected competitively through the process and was recommended to be awarded this contract. But there are other companies.
When was it selected competitively?
I don't have that date.
I mean, is this on this go-around?
No, generally speaking, the TIPS process works as the form of an RFP. They send in a request for proposals from qualified contractors, and it's a sealed bid. They open them, and they check their qualifications, and they rank them. And Sprint Turf came on top as the vendor who was selected through the RFP process.
For these kinds of...
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the issue may be me not fully understanding how TIPS works. So TIPS did this, and this company ended up as the top.
Yes,
right?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. That's all. Thank you.
Want a motion?
Yes.
28A1.
Second.
May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
No.
Najarian, Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Next item, please.
8B, Chief of Police regarding grant program for speed enforcement, distracted driving enforcement, motorcycle enforcement, DUI, saturation patrols, and DUI driver's license checkpoints. 8B1, motion accepting $429,000 and authorizing execution of necessary documents to implement the grant. 8B2, resolution appropriating funds for the project.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ensuring public safety is one of your top priorities as a city council, as you've adopted in your budget process. Part of that assurance to the public in terms of their safety is focusing, as you well know, on driver safety, be it DUI enforcement, be it distracted driving enforcement. And so as part of the State of California Office of Traffic Safety's annual programs, we are able to apply for and receive grant monies. This year we are applying for the $429,000 that is here on your agenda. We need your approval for the acceptance of that grant and the obligations that go along with it, which really are encompassed in the appropriations of those dollars for all of the varied programs that the police department undertakes. With a very brief overview of what those programs entail, our Lieutenant Stu Bracken is here to outline and profile the uses of these dollars and how they will make Glendale safer.
Mayor and City Council, thank you very much. In 2009, with the Governor's Highway Safety Association, California adopted a new goal towards zero death, and every one, and that's a numerical one, counts. We've been very fortunate in recent years to receive a number of grants. This particular year, we're seeing a consolidation of grants. We're no longer seeing the mini grants that have been available. We're no longer seeing the avoid grants, but they've been consolidated into the grant that we have applied for. The primary focus is going to be, as the city manager mentioned, speed enforcement, distracted driving enforcement, seatbelt enforcement, motorcycle enforcement, and enforcement against driving under the influence, and we see that carried out through our checkpoints and also our saturation patrols. Additional components, a little different than we've seen in past years, is bicycle and pedestrian traffic are going to receive a focus, as well as warrant service operations, court stakeouts, and we've also received some money that's going to be allocated for a new DUI trailer. For the one that we have is approximately 18 years old, and it's seen its years, and it's time to be replaced. And we've also received some funding for some portable light towers. So if there's anything beyond that, I'll be more than happy to address that.
There appears to be none. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Oh, I'm just laughing. 18 years and it's obsolete. I've been sitting here 18 years.
I'm not touching that one. I'll move this item.
That's funny.
Do we have a second?
Amusing. Second.
May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Devine.
Here. Yes.
And here.
Threw you off,
And
eh?
here.
Friedman.
Yes.
Najarian. Weaver.
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Thank you. Next item.
8C, Directors of Public Works and Community Services and Parks regarding Stengel Ball Field demolition and new bleachers and Brand Park restroom demolition project in connection with specification number 3546. 8C1, resolution rejecting all bids, dispensing with competitive bidding, and authorizing staff to negotiate directly with the three lowest bidders.
Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. This is interesting. We, as you know, we have moved to lease effectively Stengel Ball Field to the Unified School District, as they are the primary user of it, along with Glendale Community College. The demolition of the existing grandstand facility, as it's been red tagged, and it needs to be removed and then ultimately replaced. Part of our lease with GUSD and their supporters would be that they aspire to replace the grandstand facility really as it is, as a faithful historic restoration. Our commitment to that partnership, however, is to remove the existing improvements and pave the way for them to do that fundraising and that good work, all while CV High School and GCC use Stengel Field as their home turf. And so we have put it out to bid, along with the long-anticipated removal of those bathrooms just to the north of Brand Library that have been in a decrepit state for a little while now, and that will allow us to clear out those improvements and make for a much cleaner, safer area up north of the library building. Unfortunately, as we've gone out to bid, all of our bidders were missing one key criteria. But that would be doing work like this for other agencies. However, they have experienced doing similar types of work for public agencies. And so what we are recommending to you is to waive the competitive bidding process, allow us to negotiate with the 3 firms that you see there listed in your staff report, the low of $397,800 with Ocean State Development up through Triangle Enterprises at $481,400, and allow us to seek the best deal amongst those three contractors.
So why not just accept Ocean State Development's bid?
I think we would like to make sure that they truly know what all the intricacies of the very specific condition of Stengel Field. As you recall, the field, the backstop is connected to the grandstand, and there's other elements there. I would defer to Mr. Golanian, but generally we want to make sure that we aren't just locked into one provider. Of course, we're going to be looking for the confluence of the lowest price with the most experience.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Ochoa so eloquently captured all of that.
Okay.
As it stands, the lowest bidder's bid is unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
Because they're disqualified because they don't meet that one qualification requirement. So we have to reject all the bids. So while we have rejected the bids, now we have the luxury of negotiating with any number of the contractors that we can and select the best for the money.
Presumably starting with that lowest bid and then working your way through there. If they don't satisfy all of our needs, we'd go to the next lowest and then the next lowest.
Okay. So the reason there's this requirement for these entities to have experience working with a city, I assume is that the requirement that they're all failing?
No, Mr. Mayor, the qualification requirement was for all of the bidders to have completed at least 5 projects of the same size and scope in the last 3 years.
Okay.
Unfortunately, during the bidding process, none of the bidders indicated to us that they're not going to be able to meet that requirement. Otherwise, we would have amended it.
Is that normal? I mean, is that normal that these entities, these businesses don't have the type of experience basically that's being required of them?
Mr. Mayor, it could be that they may have completed 3 or 4 projects,
but not 5.
But not the required 5. Or it could be that in the last 5 to 10 years and not the 3.
Is that 5 so the magic number? Did we set that number? I mean,
we do set that number, and it's not a scientific based. So.
But the bids are good, and so we want to be able to work at least with through the information collected.
So is it possible that? Well, how long will this take, the negotiation process?
As soon as you authorize us to negotiate, we can start tomorrow.
And you'll be done?
We'll be back to you to recommend award to the negotiated contractor and start the construction in January, be completed by April.
Okay. So we're not going to have you come back in January and say, oh, by the way, we have the final amount at $600,000. I mean, how do we safeguard against that?
That would be terrible.
That would
be horrible. But how do we? I mean, we can vote it down. Obviously,
certainly.
That's one way to deal with it.
The engineering estimates that are worked up by our capital staff take into account a universe of information and context based on what we know about these structures. And I believe through Mr. Duran's work previously, we have a very firm handle. If you recall the destructive testing that we did on Stengel last year, that gave us a very clear understanding of what we were dealing with, and that made its way into the bid. So it would be highly improbable to come back with something that is north of the bids you see here.
So the amount will be closer to $397 than anything else.
That is my strong prediction.
Okay, let's see. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, just when were those stands put in? In what year?
Councilman Weaver, I don't have that answer. Maybe Mr. Duran knows.
World War II or something? They've been there. Seem like forever. 46?
Post-war.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, just history, KCC Stengel, which the field is named after, was probably the greatest manager in baseball history with the New York Yankees, Glendale resident, and buried in Forest Lawn. And Stengel Field, it's been named after him. So that's my little bit of history on it. I'll move the item.
Second.
May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian, Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Under hearings, 9A, Director of Community Development regarding appeal of Planning Commission's denial of variance case number PVAR 1238084, located at 1229 Vista Superba Street. 9A1, resolution adopting negative declaration. 9A2, motion directing staff to prepare findings to sustain the Commission's decision to deny the variance application. And number 3 is motion directing staff to prepare findings to reverse the Commission's decision to deny the variance application.
We will have Mr. Kiesel present the item. As you know, this is a public hearing, a de novo public hearing. For a property, a proposed single-family residence in Adams Hill on Superba Street. The Planning Commission denied the requested variance. The appellant is requesting that you overturn the Planning Commission and make the findings.
Thank you. Is Mr. Kiesel?
Good evening, Mayor Zananian and members of the council. Roger Kiesel with the Planning Department. The public hearing scheduled before you tonight is an appeal of a variance case, PVAR 1238084, located at 1229 Vista Superba Street. Just as a brief introduction, the project is a proposed new, approximately 1,200 square foot single family residence located on a vacant 4,340 square foot site in the R1R zone. The site consists of two lots, and the proposed residence will be built over the common property line of the lots. The zoning ordinance requires that a minimum lot size of 7,500 square feet for new dwelling units on lots subdivided prior to 1986 in the R1R zone. Since this site is less than 7,500 square feet, the project, as currently proposed, requires approval of a variance for not meeting the minimum lot size requirements. We'll go through the next slides pretty quickly. This is generally the location of the site is outlined in red. Vista Superba Street is on the right-hand side. Corona is on the left-hand side of the lot. It's a double frontage lot. And then the city of Los Angeles is actually half of Vista Superba and the lots on the other side of the street. As you can see, most of the area is owned R1, R3, the 3 being the floor area ratio district. This is just the assessor parcel map. Again, the area shown in red is the subject site. The lots on Vista Superba that are wide are all developed with single-family houses. And then the lots, it kind of shows up in the like a green or yellow, are vacant lots on Corona. And then finally, this is an aerial view of the site, sort of looking east. The site is outlined in red. The street below the lot is Corona. The street above the lot is Vista Superba.
Roger, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
please, go ahead.
So those vacant lots down below, they're individual lots that are vacant?
They are.
Who owns those?
Various people.
Various people.
Yeah.
Why are they considered unbuildable? Is that why no one's tried to develop those?
They're all fairly small lots. And
Anyone ever tried to build on one of those lots and been denied by the city, just out of curiosity?
Not to my knowledge.
So this would be the first time that one of those lots down on Corona has been tied with the lot up on
Correct.
Vista Suprema.
Correct.
That name. Great street name. On Vista
Superba.
Suprema. No one's ever
Superba.
tied those two to create a larger lot.
No.
So conceivably, the people up there could try to buy that lot below and maybe double their house size under this reasoning, or?
Certainly, yeah. I'd have to look at an individual case-by-case basis, but yeah, they can certainly purchase the lot below. It's hard.
I think they should. I'm just asking what we allow.
I do know in one instance, you have the subject site in red. The lot immediately right of that both lots are owned by the same person. I know that for sure. I don't know about the other lots.
All right, thanks.
But they're all on Corona. They're all relatively small. It's hard to read the dimensions, but they're 40 feet deep, 34 feet wide. So they're fairly small lots. All right. Last year, the planning hearing officer held a public hearing regarding the variance request for lot size, variance for reduced lot size. After holding a public hearing on the project, the planning hearing officer denied the variance application in December of last year. The applicant then filed an appeal of this denial decision to the Planning Commission, also in December of last year. This is the site plan as it currently is proposed. Between the filing of the appeal last December and the Planning Commission hearing in July of this year, staff determined that there was a special 4-foot, it's called a special setback ordinance, a 4-foot street front setback along Vista Superba Street. Typically, R1R zones require a minimum of 15 feet street front setback. There was a special setback granted 60 years ago for the street to allow a 4-foot special setback. This allowed the applicant to slightly redesign the house, and the initial project was a request for 2 variances, lot size and the amount of parking. The reduced setback allowed some minor changes to the design of the project, which allowed 2 one-car garages to be accommodated on the site. So this shows the revised design. The triangle shapes delineate where the garages are.
Quick question, I'm sorry, Roger. The line on the bottom, is that the lot line on Corona, or is that the top lot only?
No, it's the lot line on Corona.
So the proposal goes all the way down?
Correct.
That lot below where nothing has been built?
It does. The proposed house crosses the common property line and ties those 2 lots together to make one site. And so the heavy line, sort of rectangular line, delineates the entire property lines.
So one of the garages is parallel to the street.
Correct.
So if you're in the street, you're going to be looking at the side of a garage.
Correct. So this is the site plan that the Planning Commission saw in their hearing in July for a variance for lot size. At that time, the Planning Commission denied the variance request, and the applicant shortly thereafter appealed their denial decision. So that's why we're here tonight. Whoops. That.
Are you going to tell us what findings they felt they couldn't make?
I'm going to sort of summarize their reasoning. Basically, the planning hearing officer and the Planning Commission, their decision letter and motions are exhibits in your attached staff report, but in general, the reasons cited by those entities included that the lot in question, or the lots in question, were purchased after the effective date of the ordinance which increased the lot size, which was in 1993. So the current owner purchased the subject lots after that date.
Excuse me, that was the hillside ordinance. 93?
Correct, yeah. The second reasoning was the site is not uniquely small. There are available options to increase the size of the site. And then...
Sorry, what do you mean by that? There are available options to increase the size of the...
Well, let me go back. If you notice on this slide, the subject site is in red. All of the lots on Corona that are colored are vacant. So theoretically, the current applicant could purchase vacant lots on Corona, and at some point buy enough to increase the size of the total site to above 7,500 square feet. Now, if you notice to the right of the subject site, there's actually an undeveloped public walk there. So something would need to be done with that before the applicant could purchase lot 151, for example. So that's sort of what I mean by the last explanation. All right.
Why'd you skip those other?
I skipped those other two because we changed the order at the last minute, and I don't think they got in here. So I'm going to go back. Staff recommended actually approval of the variances, both to the planning hearing officer and the planning commission. The staff report contains as attachments, your current staff report contains as attachments my staff report to the planning hearing officer as well as the planning commission. Prior to the planning commission appeal hearing, staff analyzed variance requests for lot size since the year 2000. And I just passed out a chart which details information on those requests to you just before I came up and spoke. Just in summary, since 2000, there have been...
I just wanted to mention that of those three that were approved, two of them were over 7,000 square feet lots.
Correct. Those, I believe, those were on R1 lots. So, yeah.
And how many of those 18 came to the city council for approval? I don't remember any of them.
That I don't know. I can.
Not my years here.
I tend to think not many, if any.
They weren't appealed up.
I don't think they were appealed as far up as the city council. I don't know if any of them rose to planning commission. I have the approval letters. I don't know.
Okay,
I can look at them. Yeah. Okay. So there were 18 variance requests. 14 of those 18 were approved. 4 of the 18 were in the Adams Hill area, and 3 of those 4 in the Adams Hill area were in fact approved. And I go into it a little bit further in the staff report. Of those 14 approvals, many of the reasonings used in those approvals could be applied in today's case. Those reasons include it's really not feasible to consolidate the lots in this case. The second is there really isn't an appropriate use other than a single-family residence on the site. The third one is the site lot was really created for single-family development. Many of the properties developed in the area have been developed on similar lot sizes.
This is prior to the hillside ordinance? Is that how it happened?
Correct. Right. And finally, the proposed residence is proportional in size and scale to other houses in the neighborhood.
Are these the reasons why staff initially approved the variance or recommended?
These were part of the reasons, yeah. All right, and wrapping up, we've done that one, sorry. Prior to concluding my presentation, yeah.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure. This one?
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we covered all the points. We did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just prior to concluding my presentation, I've got a couple slides showing the site. This slide is actually looking up to the site on Corona. I'm sorry. This slide is a view from Vista Superba looking at the site, going back to the one we just saw. And then these are the proposed elevations of the single-family house. Should you approve this tonight, the project still needs approval of the Design Review Board. Just one final thing. There were several letters that we recently received after you all got the packets. Those were also passed out right before I came up. I wanted to make sure that you all had them. And then finally, staff recommends that the City Council consider the evidence regarding the variance request and either sustain the Planning Commission's denial decision or reverse the Commission's denial decision and approve the project. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesel.
Sure.
So, Mr. Clerk, I want to make sure you know we've opened the public hearing. We have a lot of cards, but I want to give the appellants an opportunity to present our case to the extent you want to. So is there anyone here speaking on behalf of the appellants? Can you state your name for the record?
Julie Hamilton, and I represent the appellants Mehrdad Hamadi and Simeon.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. You want to set a time for the
Yes,
applicant?
exactly. So let me stop you for a second. Is there anyone else who's going to speak on behalf of the appellants other than you?
Mehrdad and Simeon will also speak. We'd like 15 minutes all total.
Okay, you have 15 minutes.
I wanted to address a couple of the questions that came up during Mr. Kiesel's presentation. As far as the other lots on Corona that look as though they could be developed, if you look at the PowerPoint that I prepared, and if you look at page 15, what we've shown you on page 15 is the size of the existing lots for the addresses on Vista Superba. And we've also shown you the size of the residences themselves. That zone only allows 30% FAR, and it's pretty clear from looking at the lot size and looking at these home sizes that even if they combined the lots that they're adjacent to, they would still exceed their FAR. So there's little likelihood that you're going to have a run on increasing the size of houses because your zoning ordinance is already controlling that through FAR. Also, the majority of those lots that front on Corona that are below the lots on Vista Superba don't have sewer. And so that creates a problem as far as development of those lots. Mr. Hamadi did look at purchasing additional lots when he, I want to start from the beginning at this point. Mr. Hamadi saw the project site is available for sale. He has connections to the community and that he and his wife spend a lot of time up here socializing with the Iranian-Armenian community, and they like the community. They saw an opportunity to purchase an infill lot. Seaman is an architect, and her strength is green building, and she wanted to focus on an infill lot because they tend to be less environmentally damaging than new vacant lots in new areas of development. Mr. Hamadi is a civil engineer. He purchased the lot with the knowledge that typically in the United States, an owner of a legal lot has the right to the reasonable use of the lot, and he assumed he'd be able to build a single-family residence on that lot. He then met with the city planner, and the city planner suggested that that lot was really small and that it would be best if we... Oh, never mind. I got it. That lot, it would be best if he combined that lot with a second lot and made it a larger lot. So Mr. Hamadi then went out and purchased a second lot at the recommendation of the city planner in the hopes of making the lot size larger. This is the home that's currently proposed. There was a question about will we be looking at the side of a garage. You will be looking at the side of the garage, but Seaman, being the architect that she is, has designed it to look like the side of a house so that you're not looking at a sheer wall of garage. Mr. Hamadi looked at purchasing additional lots between the two lots he purchased and found that there's a 5-foot public sidewalk on the north, and there is an unwilling seller on the south. Even if you were to purchase the lot on the south, that lot would then mean that the home that's built on the above lot would never be able to merge those two lots, and they'd be on a small lot, and he'd have an L-shaped lot. It wouldn't achieve the goals of the R1R zoning, which is to have similar development on the hillsides. So this is, as Mr. Kiesel showed you, this is the project site looking west. This is what Vista Superba looks like. I suspect most of you already know. Very narrow streets, very, very short driveways. It's a hillside development. It's old school. 1926, we are going to divide up these hillsides and create little teeny tiny single family residences. I admit I'm from San Diego and we have several of these hillsides. This is looking north. Again, short driveways, minimal, very narrow streets. But he didn't create this. He did purchase a legal lot in this area with the intent of building a single-family residence and with the intent of designing a very green single-family residence. He met with planning and he tried to design a residence that was completely consistent with the zoning ordinance. Lot size was always going to be an issue. He assumed it was the last vacant lot on that street, that it was developable similarly to the other lots on that street, and he assumed he would be allowed reasonable use of the lot. I just gave you a slide of the variance findings in case you'd forgotten them. I can run through them, but I suspect you don't need to hear them again. So I'm going to go through one at a time and explain to you how you can make the findings for a variance. The strict application of the provisions of this ordinance will create a problem. It's the last vacant lot on this street. It would deny him reasonable use of the lot. He wouldn't even be allowed to put a single-family residence on the lot, even though he purchased the lot below to make it better. There was a question about the building extending over the common property line. That was done so that the lots are automatically merged, rather than having to go through the merger processes of subdivision. And that essentially extinguishes the development rights of the lot below. So you have a better situation than you have right now, where you could have had two legal lots with two people coming in and saying, you're denying me the reasonable use of my lot. And that was his intent. A better site, a better project. This project site is the last vacant lot on Vista Superba. Somebody at some point in time is going to say, hey, this is a legal lot. We should get to build a single-family residence on it. Unfortunately, with these smaller hillsides, that's the way it was done. The smaller hillside lots. Denial of the single-family residence would deny him any reasonable use of the property that he purchased. Again, purchasing, believing that he could build a residence there just like all the other residences there. It will serve the goal of the R1R residence because it will be in keeping with the existing development on that hillside. If you look in the staff report, you'll note that the R1R zone was adopted mainly for larger subdivisions on the hillsides, and that Adams Hill provides a unique set of circumstances that are difficult to deal with because you have pretty well developed hillsides and then a few vacant lots here and there. So I just want to again reiterate that Mr. Hamadi, they're not proposing anything that's not already on this street. It's the last vacant lot. They tried to come up with a nice project that would fill this vacant lot that would not exacerbate the existing situation. Same thing, we've got houses, short driveways, very small setbacks, much larger houses. And I want to put this in perspective because Seaman is very interested in green building and she tries to design houses that are efficient. This is the size of the house being proposed by the Hamadis compared to the houses next door. This is a 3D model from the architectural drawings. It's in keeping with the neighborhood. It's got 2 garages and a driveway, 2 usable garages and a driveway, which is far more than many of the other houses in this neighborhood have. This is the back of the house, utilizing decks rather than grading for yards, which is common in the Adams Hill area. It's energy efficient. It's designed to capture the sun the most effectively. Here's another picture of the house. As you can see, it's smaller than the houses on either side. It fits right in, and it nestles right into the hillside, trying to comply with the hillside design guidelines and trying to complement the neighborhood. There are exceptional circumstances. These lot size requirements were adopted while this project was vacant. Every other property in this neighborhood was allowed to develop before this project even had an opportunity. He's not proposing anything other than what's been done on every other lot on this street. This is the last vacant lot. None of the homes in this vicinity meet the lot size requirements, and none of the homes meet, well, I can't say none of them meet the FAR, but most of them are over the FAR. But none of them meet the lot size requirements. All of them were constructed prior to adoption of the ordinance. This is the last lot. He's entitled to reasonable use of this lot, and he's combined it with a second lot and now taken another lot out of the picture so that you're limited to this issue, on this issue. And again, this is page 15 where we show you that his lot is, there's only one or two lots that are larger than his on Vista Superba with the combined lots. All the rest are smaller, and most of the homes are larger. I think there's one home that's smaller. This is the existing development pattern on Vista Superba. I brought a pointer, but I'm really bad at the pointers, and I usually miss my target. Vista Superba is the last street on the bottom. And as you can see from the development pattern, large homes, similar lots, nothing different than what Mr. Hamadi is proposing for this lot, recognizing that this is a constrained area. His one single-family residence is not going to change the parking condition. It's not going to change trash pickup. If anything, it's going to improve the emergency access because at least the ambulance is going to have a backup space in his driveway. It's not changing the existing situation. It is a difficult situation, that's acknowledged. It's also a beautiful site, has a beautiful view, and it's just going to be a gorgeous home site with a beautiful home on it. I'm going to go to the next one. It's smaller than most, the proposed residence is smaller. The project side is larger than all but two of the lots on Vista Superba. The applicant is providing two one-car garages with an 18-foot long driveway, which also provides a parking space. The typical development pattern is a one-car garage with little or no driveway. It's the last vacant lot on Vista Superba, and the proposed residence is compatible with the surrounding residences. The residence complies with the zoning ordinance in all ways except for lot size. There is no other way to resolve the lot size. Mr. Hamadi tried. There's a public walk on the north and an unwilling seller on the south. In addition, if he were to be able to purchase the lot on the south, now you have that property has a non-conforming lot size and an L-shaped lot that serves little purpose. He's requesting a variance to allow the construction of a single-family residence on a non-conforming lot. The proposed residence will continue the low-density residential development pattern of Adams Hill neighborhood, although I find it hard to call that low density. Let's just say it will continue the development pattern of the Adams Hill neighborhood. And the granting of this variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance because it is consistent with the stated purpose of the R1R zone. And I've provided for you the text of the stated purpose of the R1R zone, which is to provide for residential neighborhoods and uses in the hillside areas in conformance with the comprehensive general plan in a manner that promotes the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. Within this zone, it is proposed to preserve valuable open space, physical features, and scenic resources while at the same time permitting a substantial and reasonable beneficial use of such property. The Hamadis have designed a low, one-story building that is built into the hillside. It preserves the views. It preserves the hillside. It has two one-car garages. It has a driveway. It's a better situation than most of the homes on Vista Superba. It's the last vacant lot. It is an existing legal lot. Somebody should get to use this lot for a residence, and Mr. Hamadi has proposed a very nice project on this site. He's combining two lots, so you're taking one other non-conforming lot out of the picture for future problems. Can I answer any questions?
Ms. Hamilton.
I have a question. I just have one question for you. Where are the two
I'm sorry,
garages?
just briefly.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you want to stop the time for the applicant so that...
He's already stopped us.
Okay. Just where are the two garages? I only see one in the picture.
Okay, look on the, I am really bad at PowerPoint, so you'll have to forgive me. Okay, in this photo, the car is facing into one garage, and on the driver's door is the second garage with the 3 windows that front on Vista Superba. So that's a curved driveway. Yes, it's a curved driveway, so you can either pull into the garage that's parallel with Vista Superba, or you can come straight in and go into the other one-car garage, and you have backup space to get out of the one that's parallel to Vista Superba.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions. So, as you know, for this variance to be granted, all of the findings have to be met. We can't make one finding and not make the rest. We can't make all the findings but one. They all have to be able to be made. So I'm really interested in your argument about the finding that has to be met to say there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved that do not generally apply to other properties in the same zone in the neighborhood. Because it sounds to me that your argument is, and tell me if I'm wrong, that what's exceptional about this lot is not its size, it's not its shape, it's not its location. The only thing that's exceptional about it compared to the other lots is that it remains undeveloped after a zoning change. That's the only condition, right? It is the same physical condition as all the other lots on the block. The only thing that's different is that somewhere along the line, the zoning was changed on that lot. That's your argument, that that's what makes it exceptional?
It's a 2-pronged finding that needs to be made, and the second prong is that it's being applied in a manner that deprives this homeowner or this property owner of what's been allowed for all the other property owners. That's one of the exceptions. The other exception is the public walkway on the north, which prevents purchasing any land that way. The reality is that the exception of it being that a different standard has been applied to it than every other lot in the neighborhood is enough.
And the different standard that's been applied is that somewhere along the way the zoning was changed. So it's now under a different zoning ordinance than when those original houses were applied. Because under your argument, any lot, no matter what size it is, that now is no longer a buildable lot because the size of the minimum lot's been changed, any of those lots are buildable, right? Because they may have been, they were vacant at a time when you could maybe build on a 2,000 square foot lot. So just by that very nature means that they're exceptional compared to other lots in the area?
I think when you look at that in the context of the fact that this landowner has a right to the reasonable and beneficial use of his property, I think there is something to be said for what you just stated.
So that's your argument. I've never heard that argument. I mean, I've always interpreted this to mean that there's something physically different. You know, you've got a bunch of lots that are kind of one way, and then you have another lot that's just a different shape, different slope, and that's what makes it different. And that's why it shouldn't fall under the zoning. But you're saying it shouldn't fall under today's zoning because it doesn't, because it shouldn't fall under today's zoning only because the other houses didn't when they were built, and that's what makes it exceptional.
And to bring that full circle, the true argument is that it shouldn't fall under today's zoning because this lot size is too small. And that is the irregularity, and when you have to look at it in the whole.
So what your argument actually says is that to change zoning on a lot that makes a lot undevelopable really shouldn't be allowed in general. That we should not be able to, through zoning, take lots that maybe could have been developed at one point and not allow them to be developed now. I'm not going to keep arguing with you. I just wanted to be sure I understood it. So I have a second question, which is physically, how do you build on this lot? Because I drove up there today.
It's scary.
I drive in a Prius, so I'm not like in some large, and I was scared. I used to live in the Hollywood Hills.
I won't disagree. I won't disagree with you there.
How do you do this without blocking the access for the people who live there? How do you physically, maybe the city engineer, how do they stage it? Where do the trucks go? I mean, how do you physically build on this lot and allow people access to their rooms?
I will give you my understanding and my perception. I am the child of a civil engineer in the 1950s who delighted in the concept that you can actually build anything anywhere given enough time and money. It is my experience that the city of Glendale, much like every other city in the state of California, will not allow a development to move forward that blocks the street in such a manner that endangers other property owners or prevents other property owners from blocking. There will be unusual construction methods. There will be a lot of handwork.
How do you get trucks up there? You don't bring a truck in to build on the site?
I'm going to let Meredith answer that. I've had the whole discussion, and I will butcher it with him because I had the exact same question. And yes, driving up there, I do understand your question. There are construction methods to do it, and I'm sure the city engineer will say that we can't do it if it's not safe and if it prohibits access.
Maybe they can, short of having people carry buckets up and down that hill.
I think we're, belaboring this point.
All right, well, maybe they can answer it.
It's doable, but...
you think it's doable? Just nod or shake your head.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm hearing a little maybe, maybe not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So who else was on your team that
Simon will be speaking. She's the architect and Meredith's wife, and then Meredith will be speaking. He's a civil engineer.
So there's 3 of you. Okay.
Yes, and that will be my husband.
You have, between the 2 of you, you have like 2 minutes left, so you might want to...
May I have the slide number 13, please?
Okay.
So should I...
So please state your name for the record.
Sure.
Once you have the slide up.
Dear Mayor, City Council member, and staff, my name is Simi Razavian. I'm a licensed architect in the state of California who is a LEED AP and a green building design certified by Building Green, with a proven record of designing green and energy efficient homes based on passive solar design for more than 3 decades. I have research theses on the same subject, and I have spoken about historical energy efficient home events such as Architectural Convention in San Francisco in 2009 and Notre Dame University, UCSD, and San Diego Gas and Electric, and so many other events. I'm here today in support of Mr. Himmati's appeal. I'm the architect of the project and his wife. I therefore would like to take the opportunity of this hearing to discuss few of the features in my design. I have incorporated into the proposed house all of the elements of design that the City of Glendale planner required me to consider, such as all the zoning requirements, setbacks, height limitation, maximum floor area ratio, maximum lot coverage. And in the process of doing so, however, I took steps to avoid designing a house that would be bulky, box-shaped, monolithic, and overwhelming on its scale. In the design, I put emphasis on a small, more human and elements of a scale. And I would like the council to keep in mind that I have designed the house based on the Hillside Design Review Guide, and I especially have designed the house based on passive solar design techniques such as use of south-facing windows, shades, cross ventilation, deciduous trees, and so many other techniques. We are going to also provide energy efficient and cost-effective solar panel heater on the roof, and the house will be pre-wired for the solar panel for use when they become cost-effective. Above all, the property on which the proposed house is to be built is an infill property which will have little or no effect on the environment, as essential utilities are already available on the street.
Let me interrupt you for a second. I'm sorry. How much more time do you need?
Maybe 1 minute.
Okay, you have 1 minute, and then I'll give 2 more minutes to Mr. Hamate.
Thank you. As far as matters that concern the neighborhood, I would like to direct the City Council's attention to the following facts. The house, based on new zoning, has plenty of setbacks in addition to 5 feet easement on the north. When one adds to this opening the 20 feet by 15 feet driveway, as you saw, that is open for the property's driveway, a nice opening area is created for the public interest. The proposed house will not look directly into any of the neighbors' home, Even though the project incorporates a number of modern features, such as curved roof, its opening and other elements of design retain order, proportion, and alignment, which will be visually appealing. Instead of being an eyesore to the neighborhood, based on our previous design experience, it will create visual interest and may even increase property value of its neighborhood. In due consideration of above fact, I would like to ask the Glendale City Council to exercise prudent judgment and fair and equal treatment as it considers the approval of Mr. Hemati's lot size variance so that he may build the home that he desires. Respectfully, Simi Razavian, I'm licensed architect.
Thank you. Ms. Razavian, and yes, Mr. Hamad is next. 2 minutes will do, right?
Pardon me?
2 minutes will do.
Yes.
Great.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Mehrdad Hemati. I'm a registered civil and a structural engineer in the state of California and a licensed general contractor. I have family members and friends who live and work in the city of Glendale. We were looking for a property in Glendale to build a suite to suit our needs since 2009. 1229 Vista Superba brought to my attention in early 2010 with a signed sale by owner who was from out of town. I liked the neighborhood. This lot was only lot and was in the middle of many homes, but we couldn't make a deal. After a few months, the owner of the lot called me and told me that he was putting his lot in an auction site. I was still interested and bought it from him. I contacted the city of Glendale to get a zoning information, and city planner explained it to me because of the new zoning law and also setbacks, that 2,200 square feet was too small to meet the zoning requirement. He suggested to buy adjacent vacant lot to build a single-family home. I'm a civil engineer who worked for many architects and developers in the city of San Diego, Los Angeles, and on subdivisions and single lots in past 30 years. Familiar to MAP Act and other legal issues. Therefore, I decided to buy the second legal lot and apply for the permit, knowingly that we have two legal lots, which each one created in 1926, and this was not the first time also the city of Glendale granted variance for lot size since the zoning passed in 1903. Per Mr. Roger Kessler, research and report was presented to the Planning Commission. The city of Glendale accepted 14 out of 18 variances for lot size less than 7,500 square feet, and many more before that. 4 lot size variants were denied due to applicants who were asking 2 or more variances. City of Glendale will not take a risk to grant this variance. This is the only lot on Vista Superba which has access to the public utility on Glendale side, and no other lot left on the Vista Superba or Corona to merge with these 2 lots. It makes exceptional, and granting this variance will not change any lot configuration in this area, since 95% homes have similar characteristics on the small lots. My project, as the city staff expected this much of opposition, did in-depth excellent job to check and recheck any issues to eliminate any impact on the neighborhood. It's not fair to deny my right because my neighbors want to use my curbside for their convenience as a private parking. I would like to ask you to use your fair judgment and equal treatment to approve my only lot size variance like other 14 since 2000. I just want my neighbors, I just want to have the same as my neighbors have on this.
Thank you, Mr. Amati. Thank you.
Sure. Any
we have
question?
They don't
for the construction?
Any questions? No. Thank you.
You had the question?
Well, I asked.
That's right. Do you mind if I? Yeah.
Sure, if you can address that issue.
One of the reasons actually I choose this site, and also I bought it because of the 2 public street. We are going to start from the top, and we are going to use the bottom line that there is no cul-de-sac. It's a drive-through for removing or bringing the material. And also, for your information, we are going to use we call it micro piling. It's a small piling. It's drilling, and it was created in 1980 in Italy for the historic building to not having any noise or vibration. Therefore, these are like 6 to 8 inches micropiling that we are going to use. And as far as the removing the dirt and that you are concerned, we are going to create a chute, as we did actually in a couple projects in San Diego. We are going to direct it to the street below for the truck to take it.
Thank you, Mr. Amate. Okay, so we have 10 more speakers. I'm assuming most of them are against the variance. So I'm going to limit everyone to 2 minutes, and well, each person, of course, 2 minutes per person, and to the extent that you're going to be repetitive of the argument that has already been made by the previous speaker, let's avoid doing that, and that way we can save time. So we'll start with Gary Hartshorn, followed by Ann Tran.
Yeah, Gary Hartshorn, 1320 Corona Drive, Glendale. First of all, whoever's running the video is fantastic. He gets it right every time. Okay, well, I'm cutting into my own time here. A lot of you guys haven't been involved in the previous hearings, and you've missed a lot. So it's too short for me to go into all of that. But my main objection to the site, to the project, was parking. There just isn't any. I live at the end of that street, and there's no cul-de-sac. If you come in and you've got a vehicle that won't turn on a dime, you back all the way out. And if you're a fire department, you back all the way in. Otherwise, you're not getting out. And there have already been 2 deaths on that street because time was an issue. A fire on one and an electrocution on the other. But if you look at the layout of that drawing, you see the way the cars are parked. That third car that's parked in the driveway there, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I like this guy. I'd like to talk to him, the applicant, very nice fellow. But in order to get any car out of that driveway, out of the garage, that car's got to get moved. Where's it going to go? There's no space left on the street. That's all full of cars. So it's going to have to go into the middle of the street in order to get the second car out of the garage. And then that car, assuming you have one driver doing this, is going to have to block the street while you get the first car back on the property. What? This doesn't make any sense. So parking has been my issue all along. And there is a safety issue involved in that. And the other question is an idle one, but if zoning ordinance says can be sidecarred so easily, what's the sense of them? I mean, if you say you shouldn't build on a lot that's substandard, then why let them build? And don't we already know that? If we're looking at a property, we should check it out. Due diligence seems to have been passed over.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hartshorn. Let me ask you a question. Yeah. How do you deal with the parking problem? I mean, you're dealing with it currently, I assume. It's not something that's going to arise simply by the applicant, the appellant.
Yeah. Thankfully, my lot has a significant area to park.
Okay.
But if I want to get out, there's no way I'm looking for a place to turn around. On a weekend, every place is full, and people are parked across their apron of the driveway. I know that's not legal, but they have to. There's no place to park. So I back all the way out. Thankfully, I know how to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ann Tran, followed by Trevin Matzek, sorry. State your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Ann Tran. I live at 4514 Vista Superba. I own the home that is directly across from the property. Gary covered a lot of the traffic issues, but I wanted to tell you a little bit more about how special our street is. As we noted earlier, it's split in half. I live on the LA side. The other side is Glendale. So we have double the amount of services. We each have our own postman, our own FedEx, our own UPS, so that's 2 of each. It's a very busy street for such a small street. A couple weeks ago, I had a new washer delivered, and I had to pay $75 more so that I could have a smaller truck deliver it to the street. And it was a smaller cube truck, and they were unable to get it down our street, so they had to park it at the corner of Corona and Vista Superba and hand truck the dolly to our house to install the washer. So when Ms. Friedman notes, are you going, for the construction, if they're going to be bringing the equipment in buckets. That's probably what they're going to have to do because of the parking situation and the congestion and the traffic that is going on up there. A couple of things that were noted that I find were very misleading is that there were no other vacant lots on the street. There's actually 2 more vacant lots that have not been developed that are empty. And also the size of the houses. My house is 875 square feet, and my lot size is over 7,500 square feet. The house directly next to me is even smaller. It's about 850 square feet, and their lot size is even larger than mine. So the information that they've presented to you, unless it's a different street they're talking about, it's not accurate. The drive, okay.
Go ahead.
It's really, I think it's a really beautiful home. It just doesn't exactly work in our neighborhood for the ordinances that are already in place. And I just hope that you won't overturn the decisions by the planning committee, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. We have Trevin Matchek. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
Everyone does it. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for this opportunity.
Your name?
Oh, sorry.
For the record.
My name is Trevin Matzik, and I live at 4514 Vista Superba. I'm Ann Tran's husband. As you've heard and can read from previous hearings on the subject, there are a myriad of reasons that building on the 1229 Vista Superba property is a bad idea. I would like to speak on how the proposed building uniquely impacts myself and my family specifically. I live directly across the street at 4514. Our street and the street leading up to ours is a narrow single-lane street. Because of the 4-foot ordinance spoken of earlier, you can almost reach out and touch the other houses from the edge of the street. The way that our house and garage are positioned in relation to the street, pulling in and out of our garage is next to impossible. I have a very small sports car, and when pulling out of my garage, it requires a 6 to 7 point turn to not hit whatever is on the other side of the street. So building on the proposed property will not only take away valuable parking spots, which our neighborhood is already in dire need of, it will also make it next to impossible to pull out of my garage without bumping into the proposed structure, especially if I decide to drive a car bigger than a two-door mid-'80s sports car. So, yeah. I do have a picture of trying to pull out of the garage if you guys are open to seeing that. I don't know if that's something that could be passed around or just seen, but you can actually see.
Just hold it up.
Yeah. Actually, see, it's almost next to impossible to pull out of our space. And I know it's like that for several of the other houses on the block as well. This comes with the territory of living on a hillside street. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Matzik. Winston James, followed by Ryan Sarkisian.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here.
State your name for the record.
I'm Winston James, and I live at 1235 Vista Superba, which is immediately south of the property in question. Right. I've got 2 minutes. I think you've got my document here anyway, okay? So you know my arguments, essentially. I am quite an adventurous person, but I'm also a very cautious person. And I was particularly cautious in taking on the obligation of buying a house at the height of the housing market in Los Angeles in August 2005. It's a ridiculous amount of money I paid for that house, given the condition that it was in at the time. But it had the space, it had the view, the bones were fine, and I invested a great deal of money in actually transforming the inside. Outside still need a bit of work on it. I was very cautious, as I've said. It's on a hill, a steep hill, so I want to make sure that I didn't roll down. and take me down to Corona. So I got geologists to check the soil. I got a structural engineer to check the building itself. And I discovered that it had 9 pins as opposed to 6 pins. I take out earthquake insurance, which is very expensive. I'm always tempted to stop it. But knowing my luck, the big one probably will come immediately after I've cancelled it. So I've stuck with it for almost, 9 years. Yeah, over 9 years. And I also knew that no one should be able to build on the property beside me. It's a vacant lot. So if you're buying a property, the obvious thing is to ask, is this going to be built on? What's happening here? Thank you. And the old heads tell me, look, lots of people bought that property and they can't build on it because the soil isn't stable and all sorts of problems that they had with it. But most of all, I discovered that you had this ordinance that stipulates that the lot size has to be 7,500 square feet. So I was okay. What this proposal brings to you is the violation of that sort of certainty, the putting aside of regulations and ordinances that you've laid down, that the residents, including myself, have operated by and have planned and expended money on the basis of some understanding of stability and certitude in relation to their property rights. To actually put this aside would be an absurdity. The regulation stipulates that the slope should not exceed 50%. It's 77%.
To conclude your statement.
Yeah, it's, 55 feet instead of 80 feet. 4,000 if you're generous. In fact, it's 2,000 because it's 2 separate lots instead of 7,500. So what I'm saying is that not only would I be directly affected, which is true, I'm not denying that, but I think it's a very bad precedent to set. And I welcome Councillor Friedman's question, because the logic of the argument that's been put forward is that ordinances should not be put in. You have to go back to the year zero. Otherwise, anyway, all right.
Thank you for your comments. And of course, that's what a variance process is for, to create a variance for the ordinance that's in existence. But anyway.
But I think that there are too many points that they're asking for.
Thank you. Okay. Ryan Sarkisian, followed by Rafi Berberian.
Mayor Sinanian, council members, my name is Ryan Sarkisian. I live at 1225 Vista Superba, which is immediately to the north of this property. If this was 1992, Mr. Hamadi would be in luck because he could build on that property with no problems. But since that ordinance, things have changed and there's a reason for it, and we were glad to hear that the Planning Commission and the hearing officer stuck to that ordinance and turned down this proposed property. It's unfortunate that Mr. Hamadi purchased this property off an online auction, believing that he could build on it, because the owner of this property knocked on our door before he put it on auction, and instead of believing that we could build on it, we came to the city, and the city told us that we couldn't. Even if we said if we buy the property below it and we ask for the easement to be vacated, the 3 hours and the 2 that are in question now together would have been under 7,500. It would be about 7,200, and the city told us that we couldn't buy. We still wouldn't be able to build. So we walked away from it instead of fighting the city and fighting the neighborhood ordinance and all that. So it's unfortunate that Mr. Hamadi, after making the first mistake of buying it without doing his due diligence, he went ahead and sought another property, and he got himself further into it by buying the second property, which together they cannot be combined. The only way he can combine it is going into the middle of the property to build. And a couple more seconds, being familiar with the DRB guidelines, I don't see how this property could pass with half a parking lot on one side or a garage, and there's nothing from the house that you can see except the door. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sarkisian. Rafi Berberian, followed by Michael Wishusen. Not sure if I got that last name correct.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, ladies and gentlemen. I live directly below on Corona Drive. Oh, my name is Rafi Berberian. I live directly below this property, and I've been there for 25 years. It's a great area, beautiful views, but it's also prone to having issues with parking, emergency services going up the street. As one of the ladies said, they have double every service. That presents a problem right there. I get rocks tumbling down into my property from a little gust of wind. I can't imagine having a development done on that location with trucks and concrete. Are they going to block the street on Corona Drive? That's just one problem. The other problem is he's making this out to be a modest home. Well, 3/4 of the house is on Corona Drive. If you look at all the other properties, that's why they're vacant. You can't really build on this lot. It's an undesirable lot. That's why it's one of the last lots remaining. The other issue is the 77% grade. That's a dangerous precedent. If there's a variance for that, you're going to have issues with other developers, and Mr. Hamadi is a developer knocking at your door, because there's a reason why we have an ordinance of 50 or 55% grade, but this man wants to build on almost an 80% grade. That's unacceptable. And, like I said, I love this neighborhood. I've been a resident of Glendale for many, many years, and I urge you to please do not overturn the Planning Commission's ruling on this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Berberian. Michael Wishusen, followed by Eric Yesayan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Michael Wishusen. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I would like to address the more practical point of view of the neighborhood in that I sell and list homes in that neighborhood, and the price per square footage, because of the parking issues in this neighborhood, are dramatically lower. We're talking well over $200 a square foot lower. And this is a neighborhood with fantastic million-dollar views. If you look at the comps in the neighborhood, if somebody's trying to buy or sell in Adams Hill, you could buy, say, an average home up there around $500,000. But these homes are as big as 2,000 square feet. You just get down off the hill into Glendale, and $500,000 buys you a shack that you have to tear down. Now, some of these homes are magnificent and beautiful views, but because it's Adams Hill, it's known for the problems of parking. It's a nightmare to have a guest over. Many of the people use their garages for other things than an automobile, so it puts even more traffic on the street. Another thing I wanted to address is the photos you saw were misleading as well. When you saw the photo from Corona Drive looking up, they must have been on a 10 or 20-foot ladder when they took that to make it look more level. It is literally 77% slope. That is looking straight up. That photo made it look like, oh, it's over there. It's very misleading. So that was another concern of mine. So I urge you not to overturn the previous decisions and not grant the appeal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Eric Yesayan, followed by Margaret Hammond.
Hello, my name is Eric Yesayan, and I was on the Planning Commission. I was one of the votes against approval of this project. The biggest reasons was I couldn't personally make the findings to grant this variance. Occasionally we are able to make findings for variances. In this case, we couldn't. This lot was purchased after the 1993 ordinance, so it is a self-imposed hardship. And I believe the development will be materially detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood because of how narrow that lot is and how narrow that street is. It's very hard to get in and out, and it's not an easy lot to be built. That ordinance is put into place for a reason, and even though those other lots were small, it's probably been put for a reason to not encourage any more development like that. If we do grant a variance like this, it does set a bad precedent, in my opinion, and I would encourage the City Council also to vote against it as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Eric, what was the vote split? Was there a split?
I think it was unanimous.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are you here to lobby again? I've never seen a commissioner come and lobby after a decision was made. Normally they make a decision and they make a decision, but you're here to lobby us to uphold your decision?
No, I'm here. I was one member who voted against it, and I wanted to also state that in front of the City Council as well.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of that, yeah.
Thank you. Margaret Hammond, followed by Rondi Werner.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening.
City Council, members of staff, everybody that's here. My name is Margaret Hammond. Shades of spirit of Dick Murray. After all, none of you were here when we got that ordinance passed, except you. And you know what a battle and how many hours that we put in to get that ordinance passed.
Yes, I do.
And what it took. And the reason being, we knew that Glendale was going to be suckered into doing a lot of things that they would not be good for the city. And one of them was building on steep lots, small lots that were too steep. This one is still only 4,200 square feet, and it's 77%, which is way beyond the scope of a slope should be. So I am saying to you I'm asking you to please go with 9.2, which is the motion directing staff to prepare findings to sustain the Commission's decision to deny the variance appeal. It took a lot of work for us to do it, a lot of nights late, and a lot of time from individuals, and a lot of hard feelings along the way with some people. So really, it means the ordinance is there, uphold it. You're going to set a precedence if you start doing this nonsense. I mean, the lot is almost half the size it should be in order to be on that slope. So I don't think, and again, he bought the thing on it's a self-imposed really hardship, because he bought it on as a speculator on the bidding on it. You know, I can't understand. I mean, you wouldn't think you'd want to build a house on a lot that you bid on over a TV or something or whatever. But anyway, I do feel, and the parking up there is horrible, and I'm sure the fire department has a lot to say about that if you look at your report, that they have put in their 2 cents because it's horrendous. And then here is the signed petition from the neighbors there. Every one of them that signed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond.
Margaret, one of the pages is missing on the petition. There's a whole other page.
Yeah.
Just don't have it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Rondi Werner.
Hello, honorable council people, staff, and citizens of Glendale. My name is Rondi Werner. I'm the vice president of the Adams Hill Neighborhood Association, and I'm as of 18th of this month, a certified construction documents technologist through the Construction Specifications Institute. On behalf of the Neighborhood Association, we strongly urge the council to uphold the unanimous decision denying this application, and also Planning Hearing Officer Kristen Asp's denial of this application. These were done for good reasons, and I thank them for looking out for the residents on that street. I won't repeat all the stories others have said. I think it's clear that traffic is a huge problem there and also a safety issue. So I would like to mention that the Hillside Development Policy adopted in 1993. One of its aspects is that the project should take into account the visual impact on surrounding properties. This project would completely obstruct the views of the two homes across the street. Sir, could you raise your hand? You've seen the sight lines. What would it do to your view? Yeah,
sorry,
it's going away. So I'm just letting you know the project has no regard for the property value of the other people on the street, and also the density provided for in the Hillside Development Policy says that any lot over 60% can only have 1/2 of a building, or 0.45 of a building per acre, and so this house would, of course, exceed that. In fact, at 77% slope, the slope is actually off the charts for this policy. So, in closing, thank you so much for hearing what we all have to say, and I think it's clear that the people of Vista Superba want no part of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Hahn.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to point out there were several speakers who spoke about the planner recommending that they look at buying the property next door. There is no implied quid pro quo for that. This is something that the planning staff, as a habit, advise to people who come for inquiries, especially when they're dealing with lots that are smaller than the minimum required lot size. And if there are lots available next door, the planning staff, as a habit, regularly advises applicants that it's best if they could incorporate other lots. But there is no implied promise or insurance that they might still get a variance if there is any such advice.
That's made clear to applicants, correct?
That is made clear to the applicants, that the variance process is still a variance process, and there's no promise or insurance that they might get it.
And Mr. Hagani, we don't have a view ordinance, right?
That's right.
That's right. We don't have a view ordinance at that site.
So just to clarify that, and I imagine view ordinance for LA residents would, even if we had a view ordinance, if an LA resident's view was being blocked, would our ordinance apply to this is like for sport.
It's built twice as high if it was
for theoretical purposes.
I'm glad you feel sportsmanly right
now. Okay. If we have no more questions for the speakers, we're going to close the public hearing.
Recommend that we allow the applicant rebuttal time.
Rebuttal time? Sure, certainly.
It's up to
How
you.
much time do you need? Yeah, certainly they should have time to.
I think 5 minutes should be more than enough.
Let's keep it within 5 minutes.
You got it.
Thank you.
I want to apologize to Antron because I did not make it clear that in my numbers I was speaking of just in the city of Glendale. And so it did appear inaccurate. It was accurate on the slides, but I didn't say it verbally, and I can understand how she would feel it was misleading. This project isn't going to significantly impact the parking situation. They'll lose one parking space on the street. He's providing 2 one-car garages, and yes, if there was a third car parked in the driveway, it would have to back out. The reason the car's even in the pictures is to show you that a car fits in the driveway. That's the only purpose for the car being in the pictures. We're still providing more parking than anybody else in the neighborhood. And it is unfortunate that there is a parking situation, but we did not create it. And we are trying to build a project that will provide adequate parking and not exacerbate it. I don't know what to tell you because although I understand the neighbors' concerns, Mr. Hamadi's not responsible for the poor parking. He's not responsible for the dual services. If anything, he's improving emergency access because now they have a driveway they might be able to turn around or at least use for backing. But regardless, you can't get the big emergency vehicles up Vista Superba. And he's not making that any worse. He's not exacerbating the existing situation. The house is small compared to the adjacent houses. It was intentionally designed to provide a low profile from Vista Superba in order to minimize blocking anybody's views. when you buy a house next to a vacant lot, it's difficult to assume that that lot's going to be vacant for the rest of your life. I run into this all the time in my practice. And the reality is that if you want the lot to be vacant, you probably need to buy it too. It's Mr. Hamadi and his wife Simon they're not asking for anything that anybody else doesn't have. They're asking for the reasonable use of their site. In my experience, and I don't want to tell you how long it's been because then you'll realize how old I am. Substantially older than I look, honest. But in my experience, when you have one vacant lot in an area like this is going to come up again and again and again. It's particularly in Southern California as there's more and more pressure to develop. Development of the infill lots is the environmentally sound way to go. That is where you have less impact on services. The services are already there. You're not building any new roads. You're doing a minimal amount of disturbing of the earth. You're trying to reduce your carbon footprint. It's the way to go. So, yes, I understand. If I live next door to a vacant lot, I would like to have the vacant lot be a vacant lot forever. That would be very nice. If I didn't purchase it, I wouldn't expect it, though. I'm sorry the parking's such a big problem, but apparently people are willing to accept it because they're still buying homes and living there. And Mr. Hamadi is willing to accept that there are parking issues, and it's a scary road in order to build this house with this fabulous view. I don't know what to tell you other than he's improving the situation and that he's combining two lots. And you're taking two vacant lots out of the picture that are at risk for whatever happens down the road. And he's doing it in an environmentally sensitive manner, and he's providing adequate parking, and there is simply no way for him to meet the minimum lot size standard. Nobody else on that street does on the Glendale side either. It's a good project. It's a nice project, and it's not doom and gloom. It's finally the development of this vacant lot in a sensitive manner. I urge you to grant Mr. Hamadi's appeal and to take that motion 9C that says we're going to overrule the Planning Commission and direct staff to go back and develop findings to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have questions for Ms. Frank? I have a question, quick one. So this chart, several of the speakers who spoke against the variance indicated that this chart is not reflective of the real state of affairs on that street or on those dual
That
streets.
is only the Glendale side, and that we did not do that chart. I could have done the chart similarly for the Los Angeles side. That is only for the Glendale side of the street.
So it does
It is
reflect
accurate for the Glendale side.
the Glendale side.
Yes. And that was my error. It should have been noted on that chart. You are correct.
All odd-numbered addresses, so you know it's the same.
The 1200s are Glendale. I think it's 44 or 45 is the city of LA.
Right. Okay. That's all I have for you. Thank you. We're now going to close.
Mr. Mayor, before
Yes.
you do, would like you to order all these documents that were submitted as part of this hearing into the record,
as part
including
of
the PowerPoint by the applicant, the letters from the applicant, the letters from the neighbors, and the chart that Mr. Kiesel handed out related to the variance that had been approved.
Very well, yes. Please, thank you. Okay, close public hearing. Anyone have any questions for staff?
I'm ready to make comments.
I have a question for staff. I'm sorry, I have one
Go ahead,
question.
let's do the questions
for
first.
Mr. Garcia. The granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare. What does materially detrimental mean in this context? How is that interpreted?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Friedman, it means looking at the evidence in the record. For example, what are the impacts of this project on the surrounding neighborhood? You could look at what are the impacts to property values, what are the impacts to neighbors in terms of noise.
So the
traffic.
threshold then is fairly subjective.
It is objective with some subjective criteria. Yes, that's how I would state it. It's your view of what, based on the evidence of what the impacts of this particular proposal will be on the neighborhood.
Okay, so there's no real level of proof.
There's no right answer, and I believe that there's evidence to support either view on that issue.
Thank you.
The list of variances that were filed and were approved and not approved, did those deal directly with the hillside ordinance? Is Mr. Kiesel here?
I think you'd have to have Mr.
Yep.
Kiesel.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they're all since 2000, so presumably they're all post.
Correct. I started from 2000, so they all had.
Okay, so they dealt directly with the hillside ordinance. with the
Correct.
impact.
Correct. Although I should say, some on the chart, these were just lot size variances. So if you look on the chart, there is a column that has R1 as a zone district. Though R1 zoning is not a hillside zone, so they wouldn't. The hillside development centers wouldn't apply to those.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. Okay, Mr. Weaver.
Okay.
Oh. I'm sorry, why don't we go with Ms. Devine, if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I thank everybody for coming this evening to share your opinions about this very complex and complicated issue. I want to thank staff for all of the reports that you've done, and the commission and the hearing officer for making well-reasoned decisions. We could spend hours going through this, but I'm going to base my decision on the 4 findings that must be made in order to grant the appeal. The first one is on hardship. And as mentioned before, the applicant cites several logical reasons why denial of the appeal would result in practical difficulties, but I feel that the hardship here was self-imposed. I feel that he did not do his due diligence. He did ask about, and he even mentioned he investigated the variances, and so he knew that the lot could not be built upon because it was too small. And even if he did buy the lot, he could have. He kind of knew that he couldn't build on it, and that if he did try to, there would be a terrible restriction. So I cannot make that finding. The second finding is on exceptional circumstances, and I agree totally with Ms. Friedman and not with Ms. Hamilton. I don't think there's anything exceptional about this property. I think it's exactly the same as all the ones in that area. So in view of that, I cannot make that finding. In granting the variance will not be material detrimental to the public welfare of the neighborhood. I think you can maybe say that about the site, but I don't think you can say that about the neighborhood. I think that the neighborhood will be impacted. The objective of this ordinance is to preserve and protect low-density residential neighborhoods. Therefore, building this on this lot would not be preserving and protecting the low density of the neighborhood, and it would increase the density already of a dense neighborhood and exacerbate, I believe, the existing parking and congestion problems. And the final finding is that the variance will not be contrary to the objective of the ordinance. I find that it is absolutely contrary to the ordinance. Although the 4,300 square foot lot is larger than the average lot size in the neighborhood, it is approximately 44% smaller than the 7,500 square feet required by the code. This does not come close to meeting the spirit, the objective, or the intent of this ordinance. And the fact that there are other lots which are less than 7,500 square feet does not support or justify perpetuating the very condition that the ordinance was designed to eliminate by establishing a minimum lot size requirement. Therefore, I will sustain the denial of the Planning Commission, and I want to just make this one comment personally. I've only been on the City Council for 2 months, and this is the second appeal where I feel the appellants have proceeded at their own risk. And I think as long as we continue to perpetuate that action by granting variances, it will be very detrimental to our neighborhoods. So I will vote to sustain the Planning Commission's decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how far urban planning has come since the 50s. The first house, at least on the Glendale side, was, according to the chart, was built in 55. It's right next door to the proposed project, 1225. None of those houses would exist today up there if we had current standards for street width, for slope, for everything. You would have had to grade off 15, 20 feet to make usable pads if you could have even done it. Nowadays, it might fall under a major ridgeline ordinance or a secondary ridgeline ordinance. So we've come a long way in changing. Last house up there, at least the Glendale side, was built in '78. We've done an awful lot of revisions on what you can do in the hillsides of Glendale since that time. They're right, an engineer can build virtually anything. An architect, there's good ones, and I looked up the company, I think it's MSA Architects, and I looked at some of the things written about them. They're a good architectural firm. Where I come from, I'm a civil engineer, and her husband's a civil engineer. So maybe she's getting some advice from her husband. I do my own. I don't take it from my wife. Not that point. She runs me, but not on engineering. Back in the early 90s, a few moons ago, we had a problem, a big problem existing in Glendale, still continuing, and that had to do with 3 areas that we looked at. Oakmont 5 projects, houses jammed close together, no yards, no nothing, no sides. Adams Hill problems, Chevy Chase Canyon problems. And developers were on the verge of doing more damage to our remaining hillsides. So the developers put together a committee to try to make sure the laws of the city were changed to benefit them. Chevy Chase Canyon hired a consultant to help them develop a contrary plan to it. At the time, I was the president of the Homeowners Coordinating Council, and I put together a professional committee also. And we worked on that plan for 2-3 years, working on a compromise, and that created the Hillside Ordinance. Now, as I recall, back then talking, we knew Adams Hill was gone. I mean, it was all small homes built way back when. You're not going to be able to widen the streets. But we want to make sure that it'd be extremely difficult to try to build another home in Adams Square. And we were concerned about hillside houses that were being suggested for Chevy Chase Canyon. And of course, up on Oakmont. As I recall, when we were talking about combining lots, it wasn't to combine 2 lots, one on top of the other down hills. It was to combine lots wide. So instead of a 60-foot frontage, you would end up with 120 foot. So you could design something that's visible. It wasn't the going down the hill bit. So when I see this down the hill, you're sitting with a 55-foot lot, you have side yard setbacks, you have a trail, you're squeezing it down so far. No wonder it sat vacant for so many years, because it just doesn't look buildable. And it goes exactly contrary to the hillside ordinance that we developed. That's why we said they had to be 7,500. Okay, if you can go and combine 2 lots, fine. Now the city over the years, when we see lots going on the auction block, we've gone out, we've talked in closed session, we've gone out and purchased those to try to prevent builders from coming in, oh, there's a vacant lot, and I can buy this one that can combine. We've tried to shoot down every one that we've got our hands on. That's what we've done for many, many years. And I look at, these variances of granted stuff. I judge, and I think we all do, judge every case on a case-by-case basis. No 2 lots or situations are the same, so you have to look at each one individually. And our responsibility is for the residents who live here. When I see that it was supposedly purchased on an online auction, it just seems to tell me that the applicant did not go to the city planning department and find out what kind of hurdles they were going to have to overcome to try to build. I'd have never thought I'd see that land built on. So that's a problem that's been brought up about the due diligence. It doesn't appear that has been from what I have seen. And the hillside ordinance was put there to stop this kind of development. I think we're within our rights. So I think the applicant really put the hardship upon themselves, and once having bought the lot, tried to find a way to get around it by getting another lot down the hill, which makes no sense. I understand about the construction methods, and probably pump the concrete from the street below up and put it in. You see that all the time nowadays. Lumber and stuff, I don't know how. Roll it up the hill, pull it up the hillside, or bring it up on small trucks and then back down the hill. It will create a tremendous traffic jam and a mess in there, especially with everything else that goes on up there. This has to be the only street in Glendale where LA's on one side and Glendale's on the other side. All my lifetime, I've never known that street was there, and I'm not going to go up and see it either. Because I know I won't. I'll have to back out of there. Forget it, man. I'm going to do it. So I cannot support the project. Good architect, yes. Engineers, yeah, they can do anything. But I've never seen a house where the garage is sitting parallel to the street. That's another one. I just think we're doing the wrong thing. And if we did something like this and said, okay, then tomorrow somebody else is going to be up another one. They'll be up in Chevy Chase Canyon. They'll be elsewhere in Adams Hill. I don't want to fight that battle. We've been fighting that battle for the 18 years I've been here, continually. Developers and home builders want to go in and build their dream house. Yeah, sure. So I'll vote to sustain the denial. I think he self-imposed hardships. The city didn't do anything. Just too bad that he didn't do his homework and get it all checked out ahead of time.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Ms. Friedman?
I want to thank everyone for coming out. I also want to commend the applicants, or the appellant in this case, for designing a more modest house. When we see these, usually we see really ginormous, houses that are 4,000 square feet, 3,500 square feet, so I commend them for that. However, like my colleagues, I can't make the findings. I agree with the Planning Commission. In terms of there being exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property, I really don't buy the argument that the exceptional circumstances that the zoning was changed somewhere along the way. The zoning was changed to prevent lots like this from being built on. That was the intent of the zoning. And the intent of the finding is that if you happen to have a lot that doesn't conform with all the rest of them, you could make the argument that the zoning really didn't anticipate your particular physical situation. That's not the case here. This is a very typical lot for the area. Clearly, the change in zoning was meant to apply to exactly this kind of lot. That's why the zoning was changed. In terms of granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare. This is a dangerous street. I drove up there in a Prius, and it was hard to navigate. There were cars coming in other directions. We would have to stop. One car would have to back up. There's a lot of blind turns, driveways that are substandard. I will not approve something that exacerbates a dangerous condition, and that's what we would be doing by approving this. Even if you believe that the parking's not an issue, and I'll grant you, maybe the parking's not an issue because you've got a 2-car garage and a driveway, just having more residents up there in an emergency makes it a more dangerous condition. Just having another car or two going up and down that hill every day makes it a more dangerous condition. So I'm nervous for the residents that are there now. I'm certainly not going to approve allowing more residents to go into that street. In terms of the dual services between LA and Glendale, can we talk to LA and see if we can work that out? That's just not right for the residents to have to deal with 2 separate trash trucks, 2 separate post office deliveries, et cetera, et cetera. Can we work that out? How about this? How about staff? Why don't you look at whether we can work that out and try to help with taking away some of those dual services if that's what's happening up there?
And the working out would include them paying us for it, of course.
Yeah, LA should definitely pay us to pick up the trash up there. I'm sure we would do a better job.
We'll call it Plan A.
But no, I mean, it's really making something a little more dangerous than it should be. And it could be something that could harm somebody if there's multiple trucks up there. I don't know if those trucks are on the same day, how they even pass each other. 2 cars can't pass each other on that road. It's a substandard road. Lastly, I'm concerned, I know we've talked about this in the past, I'll address this to Mr. Hagani, and this has been a part of the Hillside Design Guideline issue for a while about how to deal with lots that maybe are huge lots. I mean, we've seen them 100,000 square feet lots, but that bottleneck up to a very small portion on the road where if it was just that portion, you would never allow a house to be built. But then people say, yeah, but I've got all this land below, so I should be able to put 10,000 square feet up there or whatever it is. And it always leads to compatibility issues on building on lots that by themselves we wouldn't allow building on or slopes that we wouldn't allow to be built on. So I don't know if that's been addressed, but maybe something to continue working on. Because even if they had been able to buy every single lot down on Corona and could assemble a 100,000 square foot lot, we should still be able to deny this project. So it concerns me that we would have one more tool taken away from us that maybe wasn't anticipated in the square footage of the lot. I mean, I think we've talked in the past about restricting the calculation to the part that actually is buildable or near the street. So something to just think about as we move forward with the evolution of zoning. So I'm sorry for the property owner, but there are several findings here that can't be made. We have to make every single one of them. So I have no qualms about upholding the Planning Commission's very wise decision to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. Okay, so I'm not going to restate a lot of the arguments that my colleagues have made. A lot of those arguments are very well thought out and very reasonable. I will say that this is sort of an interesting paradoxical case in the sense that the Hillside Ordinance, I agree with my colleagues, was passed for exactly these kinds of situations, to prevent homes that shouldn't be built, shouldn't be built, which, if you look at the flip side of that, means that most of the homes that you all live in should not have been built in the first place. I hope you realize that, just from an equitable standpoint. I don't think the existence of this home would really tangibly make the situation much worse, because it sounds like it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, and again, the Hillside Ordinance was passed because we don't want streets to be as bad as the one that you're having to deal with. Of course, construction process would wreak havoc on your street, no doubt about it. I don't care what kind of new technology would be used. It would be chaotic, and it would be very bad. And this list is, again, I keep going back to this list. This is a pretty impressive list. I mean, seriously, a lot that is a lot size of 2,857 square feet, and there's a home that's 3,150 square feet on it. How did that happen? I mean, wow. But this is why we have the ordinance. And at the end of the day, this home just shouldn't be built because it's dangerous, it's a bad idea, it's the exact reasons why we have the ordinance. And it's a safety issue, it's just a bad planning issue in the past and good planning in the present. So with much regret, I do agree the hardship was self-imposed. On some level, the property value probably reflected the fact that this is not a buildable lot. I don't know how much you paid for it, but that's just a hunch that I have. And there really don't seem to be exceptional circumstances there. So, again, with regret to the appellants, I'm going to have to uphold the Planning Commission's decision also.
Would you like a motion now?
Yeah, if we have a motion.
I'll move 9A2.
Second.
We're ready to vote. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Devine.
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian, Weaver, Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. Thank you. That's it. Unless you want to sit through the rest of the council meeting, which is fine by us.
Good night.
Okay, next item, please.
Under oral communications, 5 minutes. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Okay, let's have Ara Manukyan go first, followed by Margaret Hammond. Mr. Manukyan, you have... Can we have... Let's have silence in the chamber, please. Mr. Manukyan, you have 5 minutes, followed by Margaret Hammond.
Sorry, I meant to be here earlier today. It's kind of a public announcement that I'm hoping is going to be of interest to the people of Glendale, and it has to do with possible federal funding increased for our public services, education, schools, and so on. On Thursday, that's in 2 days, at 7 o'clock, on AMGA TV at 7 o'clock. That's Charter Channel 380. It's also antenna. You can get it on the antenna at KXLA Channel 44.1. And you can live stream at amga.tv. There's going to be a discussion being held, which our guests are Councilman Adam Schiff and the other Congressman Adam Schiff, and the other candidate for the 28th district, which is Stephen Stokes, and we will be discussing the U.S. foreign policy. And there's a website you guys can actually, anybody that's interested can go on to. It's called No Bombs for Syria. There's information there which you can actually find regarding this event, and we'll be discussing U.S. foreign policy and how it affects us and what the U.S. is doing. The second item, which I've given you some information about, should interest the city also, because it has to do with how we protect our money. And once we do get these federal funds, we hope that we can get, and this is going to be, hopefully the voters will be able to make this happen on November 4th. It has to do with a member in the audit committee named David Gevorkian. And what was discovered was there's a recent project of an Armenian genocide monument in Pasadena, which I was a donor of. I donated $500 towards. And there was unfortunately the chairman resigned from the committee because of irregularities amongst the board of the committee. And what was discovered was that an audit commissioner for the city of Glendale, David Kevorkian, had unfortunately fallen short on doing some of his obligations, and he had also misrepresented himself with some inaccurate information, which that same information was actually presented to the city of Glendale when he applied for the audit committee, I guess, as a commissioner. And I've included here a copy of his application, and I've highlighted a couple things on the back of the second page, which it shows that he's with the Glendale Unified School District's Bond Oversight Committee, and he also, I've highlighted that he says, I'm a certified treasurer, and he signed under those contentions that he made. And if you go to the second page of his resume, or the third page, it said certified treasury professional. So he's claiming to be a certified treasury professional, and I wrote a press release regarding this because I'm an investigative journalist also with the Truth Must Be Told, and this is our website. This is the short version, ttmbt.com. These articles that I'm speaking about today and what I'm presenting, you can find there. This stands for The Truth Must Be Told. If you go to the press release on, I believe it's the fourth page, there is a note there that David Grigorkian was not a certified Treasury professional, and this was obtained from the Financial Professionals Association for Financial Professionals, and it was a simple phone call that I was able to get that information. In fact, he failed the test twice to become a certified Treasury professional. And the other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, let's see if I highlighted anything else. I think that's all I highlighted here, was there was an earlier agenda item, item 8C, which it was discussed that there was a certain regulation, 3 years, 5 projects, and it's for a reason, to protect the city from somebody who's not capable of performing their duties. In the second press release, there is a noted thing, an item here that took place on June 19th or 16th or 19th. It was a cigar night at Phoenicia on the corner of Lexington and Central. And Mayor Sinanyan was not here. He was in Armenia, fortunately. Otherwise, he would have participated too and smoked some cigars, maybe, I don't know. But there was illegal gambling that took place as a result of David Gevorkian's lack of registering properly the organization with the Attorney General, which allows for raffles. And a raffle took place without it being approved and authorized under the IRS and under the state of California. Thus, unfortunately, illegal gambling took place. So the last thing I just want to say is I gave you also a copy of the Glendale Code on Audit Committee, Chapter 2.82, and it talks about qualifications. I've bolded it so you can see.
Thank you, Mr. Monaco.
And also removal of members. So I would ask that the city do address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Margaret Hammond, please.
I'll tell you. Just a minute. I get tired.
Followed by Bill Wiseman.
Sorry. Okay, Margaret Hammond again. Good evening, everybody. I told you so, huh? You were on that committee, right? For the whatever. My thing right now, and we're the only ones that remember, like we're dinosaurs, right? Bulky item pickup, 818-548-3916. Please call on mattresses and furniture that's left laying around on the streets. We do not want to end up, and Mr. Najarian isn't here, so I can say it like LA, and have trash everywhere on the streets. There's a property on the corner of Boynton and Cypress. It's 1288, I think, the address. Now, I've reported it. The person that owns it keeps building fences and putting up all kinds of trash for fence. And they had up 4x4s stuck all over the lot. It was a single-family home when I first moved on the street 50 years ago, but it's been turned into a duplex, whether legal or illegal. Now she has a moat. They have a moat that it's a corner lot, and it's like a moat around on the public property, on the right-of-way, around the corner, about yay high, that if I wanted to get over it, I couldn't. I don't stop there, but I'm saying it's not legal for her to do it, and has huge cactus plants so people can't use that property getting in and out of a car or anything like that. So something has to be done. But then here we are. We have only 2 city inspectors, and how can you expect them to respond to the whole of Glendale? I don't know how many square miles Glendale is, but hey, how about the city council and the manager and the lawyer, the attorney, all going out and looking at these properties that are all illegal, since we don't have enough inspectors? I think it's a case of too many chiefs and not enough Indians. We've got to, for 200,000 people, and we have 2 city inspectors, we're down to 2 of them. This is really not a good plan at all. We're going to be looking at some bad things. That place on the corner of Cypress and Boynton, I think LA would be ashamed out loud in their city. What does that say for us? I'm sorry if it seems like I'm getting on my war path, but it's just this bulky item thing. People will not call. Somebody called me today, a friend of mine, and said, oh, Margaret, there's a house across the street. I said, well, then call. Don't tell me, and this is a friend. And she said, oh, I guess I could do that. I said, yeah, do it. That's how the stuff gets picked up if the people are too stupid to call and take advantage of the free bulky item pickup, which other cities probably charge for, then you should call to help keep our city. And she lives up near I'm not going to say where. I won't tell where she lives, but up above Glen Oaks. The Assistant League Thrift Shop has wonderful bargains. And a lot of them are sterling silver, all kinds of artwork. They do an auction once a month, and they have wonderful bargains. And the money that we take in, or that they take in, they use for children, school children, to be dressed, have senior luncheons, all kinds of things, help all kinds of families, go to the schools and read to the children, buy books for the library, give $1,000 to the schools when they go. So it's really a worthwhile place to go and support. Either take in your donations or go and buy things. They do have wonderful bargains there. So it's on the Harvard. So I'm sorry. I don't know where my allergies get the best of me sometimes. But it is a really nice shop. It's where the old Kiefer Ulrich used to be, and the alley is, Thrift Alley it's called, is on the back there. So I thank you very much for listening to me, and, what, pardon?
I didn't say anything.
I wanted to make a comment too, Margaret, that since I've been sitting up here and listening to you talk about the bulky item pickup, I've become so sensitive to every time I see a sofa on the side of the street or a mattress, I think about it and I think, oh my God, I got a call. Give me that number again.
Right. 818-548-3916. I think it's one of the best services in the city, and they're very obliging. They'll come. They're very happy to do it.
Margaret, I was thinking of you on Saturday afternoon at Kenneth Village Fall Fiesta. As I'm walking back to my house on Sonora and Kenneth, just up from the corner, I saw a couch sitting on the lawn. And I was like, Margaret, where are you? And I was just about to call the number when my kid stopped me and said, Dad, that's a garage sale. Someone sold that couch. It says sold on it. So you're effective. It's
okay,
working.
You see that? People do listen, and it does help our city. You've got to admit it. We do not want to look like South LA.
Thank you.
Happy Halloween, Margaret.
Thank you.
Mr. Gulanyan, I have a question about this. Today I had a graduate school student who was doing a video project. She's in journalism, but she's a resident of Adams Hill area, and her project was on bulky item pickup. And she said that there's a lot of it, a lot of stuff laying around that area. Is that the case? I mean, is there more there than in other places? Are we not monitoring that area properly, or no?
Pretty hard to monitor the whole city.
We are monitoring that area. I can tell you that neighborhood services staff do realize there are locations that for years and years people have actually used for dumping, and Margaret knows those areas, and she is always pointing them out to us.
So maybe that's what
that's
it is.
there are locations where people dump, right?
Apartments.
Thank you.
Can I add to that? Remember, half of the population of the city lives in that area. That's 100,000 people in apartments.
Thank you, Margaret. Bill Wiseman, 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, and the public. My name is Bill Wiseman from beautiful far north Glendale, and it really has been beautiful now that the fall weather has been upon us for a week. The reason I'm here tonight is I want to say a big thank you to the Glendale Police Department, specifically their Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Unit. Now, I know that commercial vehicle enforcement is like one of the least, exciting and interesting things that are of the many things that our police department does. But it's very important to us in far north Glendale for a reason I'll get to shortly. I was driving down Foothill Boulevard last week, and Glendale PD has a white pickup truck that's their commercial vehicle enforcement unit. They may have more than one, but this truck had a big dirt hauler truck pulled over on Foothill Boulevard. And those of you that are my Facebook friends might have even seen, I stopped and took some pictures of it because I was interested in noting what was going on. And what was going on was that the Glendale police officer was giving a very complete and thorough inspection to this truck. I actually pulled over and parked in front of Bob Smith Toyota to watch this drama that was happening across the street. And the dirt hauler truck had its hood lifted. It had the doors to its cab open. The officer inspected inside the cab. He inspected under the hood. He inspected the wheels, the axles. He went all around the vehicle. And because some of these dirt hauler trucks have been involved in accidents in the past, I think there was a situation in Beverly Hills, maybe it was a cement truck or some other kind of heavy truck, lost its brakes and actually ended up killing an LAPD police officer. And that happened, I believe, earlier this year. And so those of us that live in the areas where the streets are very steep, we also have the Los Angeles County flood control sediment placement site on the hill above our neighborhood. And that's where these dirt hauler trucks are going to and from. And normally we only see this activity when there's been recent rains and the catch basins are filled up and sediment needs to be placed on the sediment site. So I don't know exactly why these trucks are going up and down the streets now, but they are using Boston and Lauderdale and Dunsmore as haul routes. And it's a little problematic to me because not only were many of those streets just freshly slurry sealed, and now these heavy trucks are going over the fresh slurry seal, but when they come downhill, a lot of them have their engine brakes on, so they're very noisy. And it's not so much the noise that's disturbing, but the thought that, here's a heavily loaded truck at the top of a steep hill, and he's having to use his engine brakes, and this is 4 or 5 blocks above Foothill Boulevard. It causes the neighbors and ourselves some concern, worrying about the safety issues. So like I said, we're very, very glad that Glendale PD is up there and inspecting these dirt hauler trucks. Not only the one that I saw pulled over last week, but subsequently have seen other trucks also being pulled over up there. And just a good thing that those trucks are being inspected, and wanted to highlight, the good work our police department is doing. And since I have a little bit of time left, I will say that when I was in response to Councilmember Friedman asking Eric Yasayan about his coming up here to lobby the council, when I was a Transportation and Parking Commissioner, I came up here to this podium to lobby the council on an appeal regarding taxi licensing. And so it does happen, and I've done it, and you may see it again. And I think I've said enough. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Wiseman. Good night. That's the last speaking card. What's next?
New business?
We have no, do we?
Yes.
We do have new business. Yes, Mr.
I'd like to move that the City Council that the city attorney be and hereby is authorized to initiate 2 separate legal proceedings in Superior Court and or Small Claims Court in order to recover workers' compensation benefits and or property damage incurred as a result of 2 accidents involving city employees and third parties. The name of the proceedings, the defendants, and the nature of the action shall be disclosed to any person upon inquiry once the action has commenced. City attorney is further authorized to incur any and all expenses necessary in connection with said matter.
Do we have a second?
Second.
May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Najarian? Weaver?
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian?
Yes.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned at 8:46 p.m.